The atmosphere during dinner tonight, in the quiet luxury of my suburban home, felt strangely different. My mother-in-law, Brenda, was uncharacteristically cheerful. She kept placing more food on my plate, asking about my work with a solicitous air she rarely ever showed. My sister-in-law, Tiffany, was also buzzing, pouring water and telling cheerful anecdotes. Only my husband, David, seemed tense, occasionally glancing at his mother with an expectant look. I thought perhaps it was a special day I'd forgotten. And it was special, indeed. After everyone had nearly finished eating, Brenda cleared her throat and set her silverware down with a flourish of formality. Her face was radiant, full of pride and satisfaction. Now that we're all here together, I have something I want to announce to the family. Everyone fell silent, our eyes fixed on her. I was curious, too. I'm getting older. She began with the familiar preamble of the elderly, and you never know what tomorrow holds. So, I've given it a lot of thought. I've decided to draw up my will, to divide my assets among my children so there won't be any fighting or bad blood between you boys later on. Hearing this, I smiled faintly. I had never cared about my mother-in-law's assets. This large house in our gated community was something I had bought with my own money before the wedding. My company, my career, I had built it all myself. I had more than enough to provide a comfortable life for my husband and future children without relying on anyone. I simply thought it was a sensible thing for her to do, to make things clear for the future. Brenda looked at her younger son and his wife, her eyes brimming with affection. Ryan and Tiffany, you two are still young. Your careers aren't stable yet. So, I've decided that all of my assets, including the old family house in the countryside and the life savings I've scrimped and saved my whole life, will be transferred entirely to you. She paused, as if to let the information sink in. My sister-in-law, Tiffany, immediately began her performance as the virtuous daughter-in-law. Her eyes welled with tears as she took Brenda's hand. "Oh, Mom, why would you do that? We couldn't possibly accept. It's your money. You should keep it for your retirement." "Oh, you silly girl, what are you saying?" Brenda patted her hand reassuringly. "I've thought this all through. I'm giving you this capital so you can build your business, so you can secure your future. What do I need money for?" Then she turned to David and me, the smile still on her face, but I could sense a cold calculation in her eyes. "As for David and Clara," she said, her tone as casual as if she were granting a favor, "I won't be giving you anything. You two have more than enough with your big house and your successful company. You don't want for anything. I know Clara is a brilliant woman. She won't be petty and compare herself to her sister-in-law. Will you, dear?" She looked at me as she spoke, a rhetorical question heavy with expectation. I just smiled softly and shook my head. "Of course, Mom. We're just happy you're taking care of Ryan and Tiffany. We don't need a thing." Seeing my compliance, Brenda seemed immensely pleased. She let out a sigh of relief and delivered her final line, a line that would ignite a firestorm. "That's why I've made up my mind. From now on, I'll be moving in here to live with you two permanently. It'll give Ryan and Tiffany some privacy and space. You're the eldest son and daughter-in-law. It's your responsibility to care for me. I'll live out my golden years here with you, until my dying day." The entire room fell utterly silent. I was stunned. All the assets went to the youngest son, while the responsibility of care fell on the eldest. It was a perfect, shameless arrangement, but I had grown used to this injustice. For the past 5 years, I had always been the one to endure. I took a deep breath, intending to let it pass for the sake of peace in the house. But then, a single sentence slipped from my lips. A small, innocent-sounding remark that was like a lit match tossed into a barrel of gunpowder. "Yes, that sounds fine, Mom," I said, looking up at her with feigned innocence. "But since you've given Ryan and Tiffany all your assets, and you're so worried about their struggles, wouldn't it be better if you moved in with them? It would be more convenient for you to be cared for, and it would give them a chance to repay your kindness. It would be a shame if they became successful later and missed the opportunity to care for you because you were living here." The moment the words left my mouth, the atmosphere at the table froze. The smile vanished from Brenda's face. Tiffany's expression turned sour, but the most violent reaction came from my husband. Crack, crack. 2 hard, stinging slaps landed on my face, so fast and forceful I didn't have time to react. My head spun, and my cheek burned with a searing pain. I staggered, nearly falling out of my chair. "You disrespectful bitch," David roared, his eyes bloodshot as he pointed a trembling finger at me. "Is that how you talk to my mother?" Are you even a part of this family anymore? Mom says one thing, and you argue back with 10. Get up. Get up and apologize to my mother right now. I sat there, frozen, not from the pain, but from the shock. In 5 years of marriage, he had never even raised his voice at me, let alone laid a hand on me. And now, for a single sentence that touched upon the interests of his mother and brother, he had struck his own wife without a second thought. Brenda sat there, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. In that instant, every ounce of my patience shattered. I no longer felt the pain. I felt only a profound, searing contempt. Slowly, I stood up, wiping away a trickle of blood from the corner of my lip. I didn't look at David. I pulled my phone from my pocket. "You're right," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "Someone does need to get out of here." I calmly dialed a number. The line picked up almost immediately. "Willow Creek Estates. Security. How can I help you?" "This is Clara Hayes, owner of the residence at 28 Sycamore Lane," I said, my voice steady and clear, without a tremor. "I currently have 2 trespassers in my home who are causing a disturbance and have assaulted me. I need you to send officers immediately and have them escorted off my property." I hung up and looked up at the mother and son, who were staring at me in stunned disbelief. "Let me make one thing clear to both of you," I snarled. "This is my house. And, in my house, no one has the right to lay a finger on me. Especially not you." Dear listeners, a marriage that seemed perfect has been pushed to the brink of collapse over a single dinner. What is about to unfold is not just a story of family conflict, but a woman's journey to reclaim her self-respect. Please be advised that this story may contain elements dramatized by artificial intelligence to evoke genuine emotions and offer profound lessons on self-worth. Is the wife's decisive action the end, or merely the beginning of an uncompromising battle? 5 years ago, when David and I decided to get married, I felt like I was holding the entire world in my hands. He was my first and only love. He was gentle, intellectual, and always looked at me with adoring eyes. On our wedding day, standing before our families, he held my hand and promised to spend his life protecting me and bringing me happiness. I believed that promise, completely and without a shadow of a doubt. My career at that time was already taking off. The chain of wellness spas I had poured my heart and soul into after college was achieving its first major successes, providing me with an income I had once only dreamed of. With my accumulated savings and a portion of the inheritance from my parents, I decided to buy a house in this upscale gated community. It was my dream, a spacious home with a garden for flowers, a peaceful sanctuary to return to after long days at work. I bought it entirely with my own money a month before we officially signed our marriage license. That house was the fruit of my labor, my pride, and my legal separate property. After the wedding, David moved in with me. I thought it would be our private nest. But just a few months later, during dinner, David broached a subject hesitantly. "Clara, honey, there's something I need to talk to you about." He took my hand, his face etched with a bit of guilt. "It's my mom. Her health hasn't been great lately. My dad passed away a long time ago, and she raised my brother and me all by herself. Now that I'm married and have my own home, it feels wrong to leave her all alone in that old, damp apartment. I feel like a bad son." Hearing him say that, my heart softened. As an orphan myself, I understood the value of family more than anyone. I had always respected Brenda for single-handedly raising the man I loved. "Well, let's visit her this weekend and bring her some nice things, maybe some supplements," I suggested. David shook his head, his eyes pleading. "That's not it, Clara. What I mean is, what if we asked her to come live with us? Our house is so big, and having Mom here would make it feel more lively. You're at work all day. She could keep you company. My mom is a sweet person, and she adores you. I promise there won't be any of those mother-in-law, daughter-in-law problems. What do you think?" His proposal sounded perfectly reasonable. A devoted son, wanting to care for his aging mother, what reason did I have to refuse? Besides, the image of a warm, multi-generational family was something I had always longed for. I agreed without hesitation. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks after Brenda moved in, David approached me again with the same guilty expression. "Honey, I have to bother you with something else. My brother, Ryan, is getting married soon, but they're really struggling. Their jobs are unstable, and they have no money for a down payment on a house. Mom is here with us, but she's constantly worried about him, losing sleep over it. Then let's give them some money to help them get started." I suggested again. "No, that's not what I mean." David waved his hand. Mom suggested they could stay in her old apartment temporarily. But it's so cramped, and Tiffany, his fiancée, is pregnant. Mom is worried about her grandchild, afraid that place isn't good for the baby. She was thinking, what if we let them move in here with us, too? The third floor has two large, empty bedrooms. They're family, after all. It would be nice to have everyone together. And when Tiffany has the baby, you'll be here to help. It would be perfect. This time, I hesitated. Inviting my mother-in-law was one thing. Inviting my entire family-in-law was another. But seeing David's pleading face, hearing him talk about family bonds and his unborn nephew, my resolve melted. I thought, the house is so big, a few more people won't make a difference. I'll just sacrifice a little to make my husband happy and keep the family harmonious. And so, I nodded again. It was the single greatest mistake of my life. I didn't realize that my kindness and sacrifice were not appreciated. They were taken for granted. I didn't know that by opening the doors to my home, I wasn't welcoming family. I was inviting in a pack of wolves who would slowly drain me dry, viewing my home, my life's work as a debt I owed for the privilege of marrying their son. The foundation of injustice was laid by my own, naive, trusting hands. From the day my husband's entire family moved in, my spacious house was no longer a peaceful home. It became a hotel, and a poorly run one at that. A place where I was the owner but held no authority. A place where I had to work myself to the bone, serving uninvited guests who naturally considered themselves the center of the universe. My life was quickly turned upside down. Brenda, after a few days of feigned politeness, revealed her true nature as a queen. She never lifted a finger for any housework, from cooking and washing dishes to cleaning. She considered it all my duty as the daughter-in-law. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to prepare a breakfast buffet for a large family, each with their own preference. Brenda needed a hot bowl of oatmeal. David liked bacon and eggs. Ryan and Tiffany wanted pancakes. I spun around the kitchen like a short-order cook. After eating, they would leave their dirty dishes and go about their day. Brenda would go to her yoga class or gossip with her new friends in the neighborhood. Ryan and Tiffany would go to work, as would David, leaving me with a mountain of mess. Initially, I hired a cleaning service, but Brenda wouldn't have it. We have a daughter-in-law. Why do we need to waste money on outsiders? People will laugh at us. Housework is a woman's job. You're home all day with nothing to do, so you can clean up. I was dumbfounded. I was the CEO of a chain of spas with nearly 100 employees. I worked from morning until late at night. Yet in her eyes, I was an idle freeloader. I tried to explain this to David, but he just brushed it off. Honey, don't mind Mom. She grew up in a different time. Old people think that way. Just think of it as exercise. So, I had to let the cleaning service go. Every day after work, my body aching with fatigue, I would have to start my second shift cleaning my own hotel. But the outrageousness didn't stop there. They began to see me as an endless source of money. All household expenses from the electricity, water, and gas bills to the groceries were paid for by me alone. David said he needed to save his salary for big investments. Ryan and Tiffany claimed their salaries barely covered gas and their daily lattes. My sister-in-law, Tiffany, was the worst. She had a pathological addiction to shopping for luxury goods. Every few weeks, she would approach me with a pout. Clara, that new Gucci bag is to die for. Can you buy it for me? You're a big shot CEO. You're used to luxury. One bag is nothing to you. The first time, I politely declined. The second time, I ignored her. But the third time, she didn't ask me. She went crying to Brenda. And so, at dinner that night, Brenda began her usual refrain. Clara, Tiffany is pregnant, and she's having a hard time with morning sickness. All she wants is a new purse to show off to her friends to cheer her up. Are you really going to be that stingy with her? You're her sister-in-law, yet you're so petty. If she's happy and relaxed, it's better for your nephew, isn't it? Then she turned to David. David, look at your wife. She won't even buy your sister-in-law a purse. What kind of brother are you? As always, David turned to me with his placating tone. Honey, just buy it for Tiffany. Think of it as a gift to celebrate the baby. If you don't, Mom will be upset and the house will be tense. In the end, I was the one who had to back down. I gritted my teeth and spent thousands of dollars on that handbag, just to buy a little piece. And once there was a first time, there was a second and a third. From handbags to shoes, to cosmetics, to vacations, her greed was bottomless. And the ones enabling that greed were none other than my husband and my mother-in-law. My brother-in-law, Ryan, was no better. He was lazy and entitled, viewing it as his brother and sister-in-law's duty to provide for him. His child's preschool tuition, car repairs, nights out with friends, he'd call me for everything. Whenever I showed my displeasure, Brenda would jump in to defend her youngest son. Ryan is still young and inexperienced. You're his sister, and you're more well off. So helping him out a little is no big deal. Why the long face? Family should stick together. I felt like I was trapped in a spider's web. The more I struggled, the tighter it got. I tried to have serious conversations with David many times, telling him that we couldn't go on like this, that each family should be financially independent. But every time, he would use the same tired excuses to dismiss my concerns. Family comes first, honey. Money is just a material thing. Don't be so calculating. It will just ruin our relationships. Think of it as a blessing since you earn more. Sharing with everyone is good karma. Good karma, my sacrifice and my money were, in his eyes, just a way to accumulate good karma. I slowly realized that in this family, I wasn't a wife or a daughter-in-law. I was a tool, a money-making machine, nothing more. They needed me not for love, but for my endless financial resources. But back then, I still loved David. I still hoped that one day he would change, that he would see how unreasonable his family was. I didn't know that my silence and endurance only emboldened them, pushing them further, until the day came when they wanted not just my money, but my dignity and my self-respect as well. Over 5 years of living under the same roof, I came to a painful realization. The husband I deeply loved, David, was essentially a man-child, a weak-willed individual who had never truly grown up. He lived perpetually in his mother's shadow, and every major decision in his life was dictated by Brenda. His love for me was probably real, but it wasn't strong enough to overcome his blind obedience to his mother and the ridiculous indulgence he showed his younger brother. He always played the role of the mediator, the one in the middle, but his scales of justice were never balanced. They always tipped in his family's favor. Whenever a conflict arose between me and my mother-in-law or sister-in-law, the script was always the same. First, he would pull me into our bedroom and close the door. He would hug me, stroke my hair, and whisper sweet nothings. Honey, I know you're tired. I love you so much. After calming me down, he would launch into his timeless sermon. But honey, try to see it from her perspective. My mom is old, my dad is gone, and she raised us all by herself. Old people can be a bit difficult, a bit set in their ways. We're children. Can't we just give in a little? A little bit of grace goes a long way. If you're always tense with mom, it puts me in a very difficult position. If I still tried to argue right from wrong, he would switch to his second tactic, appealing to my pride and generosity. You're a CEO, an educated woman with social standing. Why lower yourself to her level? My mom is from a small town. Her thinking is simple. You're the owner of this house. You're more successful. If you're a little more generous and tolerant, you're setting an example for everyone. He skillfully transformed his mother's outrageous behavior into the simple thinking of an old woman and my endurance into the responsibility of an educated, successful person. And if both of those tactics failed, he would resort to his final move, getting sulky and turning the blame on me. I work all day, and I'm exhausted. I come home hoping for a peaceful, happy family atmosphere. But you just have to make everything complicated. It's such a small thing, and you can't even let it go. Clara, do you even see me as your husband anymore? Do you have any respect for my family? Just like that, I would go from being the victim to the one at fault, an unreasonable wife, a disrespectful daughter-in-law. And in the end, for the sake of a peaceful home, to make my husband happy, I would be the one to back down and apologize, even though I had done nothing wrong. I remember once, Brenda took my car without asking to show off to her friends. She didn't have a license and wasn't used to the car, so she scraped it against a wall, leaving a long scratch. When I got home and saw it, I just said gently, Mom, next time you want to go somewhere, just call my driver. This car is tricky to handle, and it's dangerous. For that one comment, she threw a massive tantrum, accusing me of being stingy and looking down on her. She cried to David, and that night, I had to endure a 2-hour lecture from my husband about filial piety. In the end, I had to be the one to apologize to her and give her a large sum of money the next day to go have fun with her friends. Then, there was my sister-in-law. After giving birth, she automatically assumed it was my duty to take care of her child. She would hand the baby over to me, and then go off to the spa, to the mall, or out for coffee with her friends all day. When I was exhausted and suggested to David that Tiffany should spend more time with her own son, he brushed it off. She has postpartum depression. You have to be understanding. You're his aunt. What's wrong with taking care of him for a bit? She'll be grateful to you later. Grateful. For 5 years, all I got were promises of gratitude, but in reality, it was just escalating exploitation. I gradually realized that in David's eyes, I wasn't a life partner for him to cherish and protect. I was just a tool for him to fulfill his duties as a good son. He used my sacrifice, my money, and my patience to please his mother and brother. He wanted it all. A talented, wealthy wife, so he could look good to the world and his own family, fully provided for, so he could play the role of the devoted son and exemplary older brother. He wanted to build his perfect image on my suffering and endurance. His weakness wasn't a product of gentleness. It was a cleverly disguised form of selfishness. He was afraid of upsetting his mother, afraid of confrontation. So he chose the easiest path, shifting the entire burden onto my shoulders. Those 2 slaps at the dinner table were not a spontaneous act. They were the inevitable result of years of suppressed resentment. The moment his latent selfishness and patriarchal mindset were laid bare. The moment I, his tool, dared to question his mother's decree. But he was wrong. Even a tool has its breaking point. And when it decides to fight back, it is no longer an inanimate object. After my sharp words, the room plunged into a suffocating silence. Brenda was stunned, the tirade she was about to unleash caught in her throat. She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. For 5 years, she had grown accustomed to the image of a daughter-in-law who always bowed her head, never daring to talk back. My sudden and fierce resistance was beyond her imagination. My sister-in-law, Tiffany, turned pale and quickly looked down, not daring to meet my gaze. My brother-in-law looked bewildered, glancing from his mother to his brother to me, clueless. But the most shocked of all was David. He was frozen to the spot, the hands that had slapped me still hovering in midair. He looked at me with an expression of pure disbelief. He couldn't believe that his gentle, obedient wife could do something so audacious, calling security to throw her own husband and mother-in-law out of the house. Clara, are you out of your mind? He was the first to break the silence, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and confusion. What did you just do? Do you have any idea what you're saying? I know exactly what I'm doing, I replied, my voice devoid of any emotion, as cold as ice. I am requesting that the 2 people who assaulted and humiliated me get out of my house. Did you not hear me correctly? Your house? David shouted, his anger overwhelming his reason. This is our house. I am your husband, and this is my mother. What right do you have to kick us out? The right of the legal owner, I sneered, a bitter smile on my lips. Let me remind you, this house was purchased with my money and is in my name. From before we were married. Legally speaking, you and your mother are merely guests. And tonight, the owner of this house no longer wishes to have you as guests. Just then, the doorbell rang insistently. 2 tall security guards from the community association stood at the door. They stepped inside, took in the tense scene, and spoke in a professional tone. Ma'am, we received your call. Is there a problem here? I pointed at David and Brenda. These 2 individuals have been causing a disturbance and have assaulted me. I want you to escort them off my property immediately. I don't want to see them again. You dare! Brenda finally snapped out of her shock. She shrieked and lunged at me. I am your mother-in-law. You ungrateful wretch. I'll teach you a lesson. But the 2 guards quickly intervened, restraining her. David also rushed forward, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. Clara, stop this right now. Don't take things too far. What will the neighbors think? What will they think? I stared directly into his eyes, my own now filled with nothing but contempt. When you raised your hand to slap me, did you think about appearances? When your mother insulted me, did you think about appearances? It's too late for that now. I turned to the guards. Please do your job. If they do not leave voluntarily, you are authorized to use necessary force. Seeing the gravity of the situation and realizing I was not bluffing, the guards took action. One held Brenda, while the other escorted David towards the door. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? I'll sue you for trespassing. Brenda thrashed and cursed wildly. David struggled, looking back at me with eyes that were a mixture of fury and pleading. Clara, please don't do this. Give me a minute to talk to you. Let's just talk. But I just shook my head coldly. The door to my heart had slammed shut forever. Eventually, faced with my resolve and the professionalism of the security team, The mother and son were escorted out of the gate. Seeing the tide had turned, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law hastily gathered a few things and scurried after them. The heavy iron gate slammed shut, separating two worlds. Outside were Brenda's incessant curses and screams, and the sound of David banging on the gate. Neighbors had started to gather, pointing and whispering. Inside, I stood alone in the vast, cold house. I felt no satisfaction, only an extreme sense of exhaustion and emptiness. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Under the yellow glow of the street lights, I saw David trying to pull his mother away, but she refused, sitting down on the pavement and wailing. The sight was pathetic. I dropped the curtain and turned away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone in the dark, the imprint of David's hand still burning on my cheek. The phone on the table lit up constantly with messages and missed calls. Dozens of vile, profanity-laced texts from Brenda. Dozens more from David, alternating between threats. "You will regret this, and please. Honey, I was wrong. Please let me come home." I didn't read them. I didn't answer. I just watched them silently. My wall had been built. I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of an uncompromising war. And in this war, I would not retreat another step. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a heavy heart. I had barely slept. After a humiliating night of being thrown out onto the street, I knew David and his mother wouldn't stay quiet. And just as I predicted, their attack came sooner than I expected. It wasn't through abusive phone calls this time, but a direct assault aimed at what they thought was my greatest vulnerability, my career and reputation. Around 9 a.m., just as I arrived at my corporate office to prepare for an important meeting with investors, my assistant rushed in, her face pale. "Miss Hayes, there's a problem. You need to come see this." I frowned, a sense of foreboding washing over me. I hurried out to the main lobby. A chaotic scene greeted me. Brenda, my mother-in-law, was sitting on the floor in the middle of the pristine reception area. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes rumpled. She was wailing, slapping her hands on the polished marble floor, and crying out pitifully. "Oh, Lord, everyone come and see my daughter-in-law. She's a big CEO, so rich, but so heartless. She kicked her old mother-in-law out of the house in the middle of the night. What did I do wrong? I just said a few words, and she treated me like dirt. She even called security to drag me away. Has anyone ever heard of a daughter-in-law treating her husband's mother like this?" Beside her, David stood with a look of profound sorrow, wearing the same crumpled clothes from the day before, his eyes dark with exhaustion. He said nothing, just occasionally reached down to help his mother up, then turned away to wipe away fabricated tears of grief. They were putting on a perfect performance of the virtuous mother and devoted son being abused by the evil, wealthy daughter-in-law. A crowd had formed, consisting of my employees and people from other offices in the building. They were pointing, whispering, and gossiping. A few even had their phones out, recording. "That CEO, Hayes? She seems so elegant. I can't believe she'd treat her mother-in-law that way. You really can't judge a book by its cover. What's the point of being rich if you have no morals? That poor old woman, she must be so devastated to come here and do this." The whispers, the judgmental stares, the looks of pity, they were all directed at me. I knew this was their goal. They wanted to destroy my image, to use public opinion to tarnish my reputation and sabotage my career. They wanted to turn me from a victim into a villain in everyone's eyes. Rage simmered in my chest, but I took a deep breath, telling myself to stay calm. If I stooped to their level and started a screaming match, I would only make things worse. I would be walking right into their trap. I signaled to the building's head of security, asking them to maintain order, but not to touch the mother and son. Then, I calmly walked toward the crowd. My appearance caused a momentary hush. Seeing me, Brenda wailed even louder. "There she is, the heartless daughter-in-law. How dare you show your face? Are you even human?" I ignored her. I scanned the crowd of curious onlookers and then spoke, my voice not loud, but clear and firm enough for everyone to hear. "Good morning, everyone. I am Clara Hayes, CEO of the company on the 10th floor. I sincerely apologize that my private family matters have caused a disturbance. What my mother-in-law has said is her version of the story. As for the truth, I trust that the law and each person's conscience will be the judge." I paused, then continued, my voice still unnervingly calm. "However, this is a place of business. I cannot allow personal issues to disrupt the professional environment." I raised my voice slightly. "Security, Please escort these two individuals from the lobby. If they refuse to cooperate, please contact the nearest police precinct and report them for creating a public disturbance." Without giving them another glance, I turned and walked straight toward the elevators, leaving everyone in a state of shock. I could hear Brenda still screaming and cursing behind me, and David calling my name in a choked voice. But I didn't look back. I knew my actions might seem cold-hearted to many, but I had no other choice. This was no longer just a family dispute. It had become a battle for my honor. And to protect my honor, sometimes you have to be tougher and more ruthless than your enemy. But was my resolve enough to extinguish the fire they had so deliberately set? Or would it only add more fuel, driving them to even greater madness? After their failed attempt to cause a scene at my office, David and his mother seemed to realize that a direct confrontation was not a wise move. They went quiet, the harassing calls and texts stopped, and there were no more public displays. This silence gave me a moment to breathe, but it also put me on high alert. I knew this was just the calm before another storm. They were undoubtedly plotting something new, an attack from an angle I wouldn't expect. And that attack came, not in the form of an argument or a smear campaign, but disguised as a peace offering, delivered by the perfect actress for the role. Tiffany, my two-faced sister-in-law. 2 days after the incident at my office, I received a call from her. Her voice on the other end was filled with remorse and anxiety. "Clara? It's Tiffany. Are you free? Can I please meet you for a little while? There's something really important I need to tell you. I'm begging you." Her urgent tone piqued my curiosity, but I was smart enough to know there was no such thing as a free lunch. There had to be a scheme behind it. Nevertheless, I decided to meet her. I wanted to see what new trick they had up their sleeve. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop not far from my office. Tiffany arrived on time, looking haggard, her eyes puffy as if she'd been crying for days. She wore a simple dress, a stark contrast to her usual flashy, designer-clad appearance. As soon as she saw me, she shot up from her seat and bowed her head. "Hi, Clara. I'm so sorry to bother you." I said nothing, just gestured for her to sit. I ordered a chamomile tea. She only asked for a glass of water. Without waiting for me to ask, Tiffany began her performance. She sniffled, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Clara, I know you won't believe anything I say right now, but I really don't know what to do anymore. Things at home have been so tense. Mom was wrong. I know she was awful to you. David, too. I tried to talk sense into them, but no one listened to me." She lamented about how heartbroken and torn she was, caught in the crossfire. She claimed she had always been grateful to me, always saw me as a real sister. She painted a picture of herself as an innocent victim dragged into an adult conflict. "The reason I came here today," she said, looking up with tear-filled eyes, "is to apologize on behalf of Mom and David. I know Mom has a sharp tongue, but she doesn't mean it. She just loves David too much. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive them and let them come back home? Without you, the house feels so cold and empty. My son keeps asking where Uncle David and Grandma are." She even used her own child as a tool for sympathy. Her acting was flawless. If this had been the me of a week ago, I might have softened. But now, I just found it laughable. I took a sip of my tea and replied calmly, "I appreciate the sentiment, Tiffany, but what's done is done. My relationship with David is beyond saving. I've decided to file for divorce." Hearing the word divorce, a flicker of panic crossed Tiffany's face, but she quickly masked it. "Clara, don't be so hasty. You two have been together for years. Whatever the problem is, you can work it out. David, he still loves you so much. He hasn't been eating or sleeping, just sits on the porch all day long, calling your name." She continued to weave her tragic love story, but I had lost my patience. "If that's all you came to say, I think we're done here. I have a lot of work to do." I stood up to leave. "Wait, Clara." Tiffany quickly grabbed my arm. There's one more thing." She glanced around nervously and then lowered her voice to a whisper. Are you thinking of selling the house?" There it was. Her true purpose was finally revealed. I sat back down, folded my arms, and looked her straight in the eye. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, well, I was just wondering," Tiffany stammered. "I just thought, if you're getting divorced, it must be lonely living in such a big house by yourself. Maybe you could sell it, use the money to buy a smaller condo, and have a large sum left over to invest. You know, I have a friend who's a real estate agent. He said he could get you a really high price for it. Besides," she hesitated, a greedy glint in her eyes she couldn't hide. If you sell it, maybe you could loan Ryan and me a little to start our business. As a final favor, we would be grateful to you for the rest of our lives. I stared at her, saying nothing, just a cold, knowing smirk forming on my lips. I understood everything. They hadn't just given up on moving back in. They had pivoted to a new plan. If they couldn't have the house, they would at least try to get a huge chunk of cash from its sale. And Tiffany, with her pathetic peacebroker act, was the pawn sent to scout and execute the first move of that plan. Thank you for the advice, I said nonchalantly. I'll think about it. With that, I stood up and walked out, leaving Tiffany sitting there with a look of both hope and confusion, unable to decipher the meaning behind my smile. She had no idea that she had just walked herself into a new trap. And this time, I would no longer be the one on the defensive. After my meeting with Tiffany, I was certain they wouldn't give up on my assets. Their Peace and Reconciliation Act had failed, and they knew sweet-talking me was no longer an option. So, just as I predicted, they played their final card, the dirtiest and most common one in the book, faking an illness. 2 days later, late one evening as I was wrapping up a long day at work, my phone rang. It was David's number. I had blocked him, but he must have used a different phone. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. It wasn't David's voice on the other end, but the hysterical sobs of my sister-in-law. Tiffany, Clara, you have to get to the hospital. Now. It's Mom. She's in critical condition. What happened? I asked. My gut told me this was a lie, but a faint sense of unease still crept in. She had a sudden heart attack. The doctors, they said it's because she's been so worried and heartbroken about you and David. David is admitting her now. Clara, please, come quickly. The doctor said Mom wants to see you one last time. Tiffany sobbed and stammered, her tone so tragic it was as if Brenda was already on death's door. See me one last time. What a clumsy charade. But I knew if I didn't go, they would have another reason to parade me around as the cold-hearted daughter-in-law who wouldn't even visit her dying mother-in-law. They were trying to corner me, using morality and compassion to force my hand. All right, I'm on my way, I said curtly and hung up. Of course, I wouldn't go alone. I called my lawyer, briefly explained the situation, and said, I need you to come with me and bring a recording device. When we arrived at the hospital, David was waiting by the entrance to the emergency room. He looked disheveled, his eyes red and swollen, perfectly playing the part of a heartbroken, dutiful son. The moment he saw me, he rushed over and grabbed my hands, his voice thick with blame and anguish. Clara, you're here. Look what you've done. Mom is like this because of you. Are you happy now? If anything happens to her, can you live with yourself? He was trying to pin all the blame on me. I said nothing, just coldly pulled my hands away. How is she? The doctors are with her now. It's critical. He started sobbing again. We sat on the waiting room bench. A little while later, a doctor emerged from the ER, pulling off his mask with a grave expression. Who is the family of Brenda Miller? That's us. David shot up. How is my mother, doctor? We've managed to stabilize her for now. But due to the severe emotional shock combined with a pre-existing heart condition, she is still very weak. We're moving her to the cardiac care unit for close observation. The family should prepare for the worst. The doctor said his piece and hurried away. I glanced at my lawyer. He gave a slight nod. Everything was going according to plan. Brenda was wheeled out on a gurney, her face pale, eyes closed, with tubes and wires attached to her. She truly looked like a patient on the verge of death. David and Tiffany rushed alongside, weeping dramatically. My lawyer and I followed at a distance. She was taken to a private room. After the nurses finished their work and left, Brenda was still unconscious on the bed. David turned to me, his tone softening into a plea. Clara, you see how it is. Mom is in this state because she was worried about our happiness. I'm begging you. Please withdraw the divorce petition. Please forgive Mom. Just go to her bedside and tell her one thing. Tell her you won't leave me, that you won't leave this family. Maybe if she hears your voice, she'll wake up. I'm begging you. He was using his mother's condition to pressure me into coming back. It was a perfect performance. But they were mistaken. I was no longer the old Clara. I didn't answer him. I quietly walked over to the gift basket. I had brought a beautiful arrangement of fruit and snacks. I took out a crisp, red apple and began to peel it methodically. Mom is so sick, she probably can't eat anything, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. So I'll just peel this apple and leave it here. When she wakes up, Maybe the fresh scent will make her feel a little better. I placed the plate of carefully sliced apple on the small table by her bed. My action left both David and Tiffany bewildered. They had no idea what I was doing. They didn't know that nestled inside one of the other apples was a tiny, perfectly camouflaged recording device. Well, I think I should go, I said. My being here might just agitate her more. If anything happens, you can call my lawyer. With that, my lawyer and I turned and left, leaving behind a family engrossed in their play, completely unaware that they had just become the lead actors in another. A play in which their every word, their every scheme, was being recorded in crystal clear detail. Dear listeners, when people are blinded by greed, they can defy all reason, even using the health of their loved ones to achieve their goals. But can deceit fool the world forever? Once the truth is revealed, what will be the price? This is not just a lesson in our story, but a law of karma in life itself. I went home, but my mind was still at the hospital. I wasn't worried about Brenda's health. I knew it was all an act. I was worried about my plan. Were they foolish enough to expose their own conspiracy? Was the recording device working properly? 1,000 questions swirled in my head, making it impossible to sit still. My lawyer had arranged for someone to monitor the situation at the hospital and retrieve the device at the right moment. All I could do was wait. The wait lasted a day and a night. During that time, David constantly called and texted me. Sometimes he'd report that his mother's condition was worsening. Other times he'd guilt-trip me for being a cold-hearted, unfeeling wife. Then he'd beg me to come back to see his mother one last time. I didn't answer a single message or call. I knew the more desperate he became, the more likely they were to slip up. Finally, on the afternoon of the next day, my lawyer called. Clara, we've got it. Can you come to my office right away? My heart pounded. I rushed to his office. He was waiting for me, his expression a mix of excitement and gravity. He said little, simply plugged a small device into his computer and played the audio file. The room fell silent, filled only by the sickeningly familiar voices coming from the speakers. The recording began with Brenda's faint moaning. Oh, my head hurts, my back aches. Lying here like this is torture. Just hang in there a little longer, Mom, David's voice replied. She's gone. She's probably scared now. I just called and gave her another earful. She'll have to come crawling back soon. When she comes back, you two better act your parts well. Brenda's voice was no longer weak, but sharp and cunning. Especially you, Tiffany. You have to cry your eyes out. Grab her leg and beg. Tell her I'm not going to make it, that my only dying wish is for her forgiveness. You have to make her feel guilty, like it's all her fault. Then came Tiffany's voice, laced with worry. But Mom, staying in the hospital like this is so expensive. Where are we going to get the money to pay for it? What are you worried about? Brenda snapped. For every dollar we spend, we'll get 10 back from her later. Don't you worry. I have it all planned out. This time, not only will she have to come back, but we're going to squeeze a huge sum of money out of her for emotional damages. I'll say I have PTSD from the shock and need to go abroad for treatment. We should be able to get at least a couple $100,000 out of her. A couple $100,000. I felt my knees go weak. Their greed truly had no bounds. They didn't just want me back as an obedient daughter-in-law and an ATM. They wanted to milk me dry. But what if she doesn't give it to us, Mom? David asked. She won't give it? Brenda let out a chilling, ugly laugh. If she doesn't, we have other ways. We'll sue her for elder abuse, for causing her mother-in-law to be hospitalized. We'll hire a publicist, get articles written, spread it all over social media. Clara is a public figure. She's terrified of losing her reputation. When that happens, she'll have to pay us hush money whether she wants to or not. Do you understand now, son? The recording ended, but a storm was raging in my mind. Their entire plan, from faking the illness and acting out a drama to blackmail and defamation, was laid bare. They weren't just greedy. They were people without a shred of decency, without an ounce of human compassion. Clara, with this recording, we have more than enough evidence to sue them for defamation, fraud, and attempted extortion, my lawyer said decisively. I nodded, but another feeling was rising within me. I didn't just want to win in court. I wanted them to pay a higher price. I wanted them to experience the feeling of being cornered, the desperation of having their every scheme unraveled. I wanted the curtain to fall on their play in the most spectacular, unforgettable way. I looked at my lawyer, a cold determination in my eyes. Henry, I have another plan. Dear listeners, Witnessing such naked conspiracy and bottomless greed would infuriate anyone. But life sometimes requires more than legal punishment. It demands a fitting lesson that makes the wicked truly understand their folly. When a woman is hurt to her core, how formidable will her retaliation be? Let's watch the decisive move Clara is about to make. With the trump card in my hand, I didn't rush to play it. I knew that for a play to have a truly impactful finale, it needed a grand stage and a large audience. I decided I would no longer be on the defensive. I would be the one to attack, but in a way they could never anticipate. I sent a short, powerful text message to David. I was wrong. I'm coming to the hospital. I'll do whatever Mom wants, as long as she gets better. David was ecstatic. He called me immediately, his voice filled with joy and triumph. I knew it. I knew my wife was a good person. Come quickly. Mom is waiting for you. I'll be there, I replied. But I won't be alone. I'm inviting all our aunts and uncles from both sides of the family to witness my apology. I want everyone to see that I've truly repented. I've also prepared some money for Mom's hospital bills and recovery. I'll bring it with me. My proposal was beyond his wildest dreams, but it was so logical and advantageous for him. With relatives as witnesses, I couldn't go back on my word. With cash in hand, their objective would be achieved quickly. He agreed instantly, without a hint of suspicion. Oh, honey, that's so thoughtful. That's wonderful. Go ahead and invite everyone. I'll tell Mom right away. And so, an unusual family gathering was arranged to take place in Brenda's hospital room. I had my relatives call all the most respected and influential elders from both sides of the family. I also made sure to invite a friend of mine, a journalist, to attend as a family friend to document the entire event. That afternoon, the quiet hospital room became crowded and tense. Aunts and uncles from both families filled the space, their faces serious. David's family couldn't hide their triumphant expressions. Brenda was still in bed, but Tiffany had put a little makeup on her to make her look pale but presentable. David stood beside her, playing the part of the dutiful son and husband, shouldering a great burden. When I walked in, all eyes turned to me. I was dressed simply, with light makeup to look weary, carrying a briefcase. I walked to the center of the room and bowed my head to everyone. Aunts, uncles, Mom, David, I began, my voice trembling, as if on the verge of tears. I've asked you all here today, first to check on Mom's health, and second, so I can offer my most sincere apology. I turned towards the bed where Brenda lay, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. I slowly knelt down. Mom, I was wrong. It was my disrespect that caused you so much worry and pain that you fell ill. I'm begging you to forgive me. My performance was perfect. People in the room began to whisper, some sympathetic, some still blaming me. Seeing her moment, Brenda seized it. She raised a weak hand. There, child, get up. I don't blame you. As long as you realize your mistake, that's all that matters. I stood up, wiped my tears, and opened my briefcase. Inside were neat stacks of cash. Here is $50,000 I've prepared for your medical bills and recovery. I know this can't make up for my mistake, but it comes from my heart. At the sight of the money, Brenda's and David's eyes lit up. They thought I had completely surrendered. Well, since the girl is showing such sincerity, you should forgive her. One of David's uncles spoke up. That's right. What's done is done. A harmonious family is the most important thing. Seeing everyone on her side, Brenda began her final act. She struggled to sit up, took my hand, her eyes glistening with tears. My daughter, I don't need your money. All I need is for you to promise me one thing. Promise me that from this day forward, you will never talk back to me again, that you will always be a dutiful daughter-in-law, and that you and David will live happily together and never speak of divorce again. Will you promise me that? She was trying to bind me with a promise in front of all our relatives. I looked deep into her eyes, and a cold smile spread across my face. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't promise that. The room fell silent. Brenda froze. Because, I continued, my voice no longer trembling but sharp and strong. Promises are for trustworthy people. For liars and schemers, there is only the law. With that, I turned away from her and faced the large television mounted on the wall. I pulled a small remote from my pocket. Aunts, uncles, before I make my final decision, I'd like to invite you all to watch a short film. I believe you'll find this performance quite compelling. I pressed play. The television screen lit up, and the familiar voices of Brenda, David, and Tiffany filled the room. loud and clear, exposing their entire scheme of faking an illness and extorting money. My play had ended. Theirs was just beginning. Dear readers, the story you are following is a journey in search of justice and self-respect. Please be reminded that some details may have been fictionalized for dramatic effect, aiming to provide a compelling entertainment experience and powerfully convey profound life lessons. As the raw, despicable words of David's family echoed from the television, the hospital room seemed to freeze. The air grew so thick, you could hear a pin drop. The aunts and uncles, who just moments before were advising me to be forgiving, now sat motionless, their expressions shifting from surprise to shock, and finally to pure outrage. For every dollar we spend, we'll get 10 back from her. At least a couple $100,000. If she doesn't pay, we'll sue her for elder abuse, hire a publicist. Every word was a sledgehammer blow to the facade of victimhood they had so carefully constructed. David's family was the most stunned. Brenda, the gravely ill patient, shot upright in bed, her eyes wide and fixed on the screen. She had forgotten she was supposed to be sick. Her face turned ashen. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. David stood as if struck by lightning, his entire body trembling. He looked from the TV to me, his eyes filled with a horrified disbelief. He couldn't comprehend how their most private conversations, their most secret plots, could be exposed so humiliatingly before everyone. My sister-in-law, Tiffany, had slumped to the floor at some point, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. When the recording ended, silence still reigned. But it was a terrifying silence, the kind that precedes an explosion. The one to break it was David's eldest uncle, a respected and authoritative figure in their family. He shot to his feet, his face red with fury. He strode over to Brenda, pointed a finger in her face, his voice shaking with indignation. Brenda, are you even human? What have you done? You have brought shame upon this entire family. Clara has been nothing but good to you, and you repay her by trying to destroy her? Do you have any decency left? Then he turned on David. And you. You are her husband, the eldest son. Instead of guiding your wife, you collude with your mother in these despicable acts. Do you even call yourself a man? As the uncle continued his tirade, Brenda seemed to lose her mind. She no longer cried or played the victim. She leaped off the bed and lunged at me, screaming like a wounded animal. It was you. You scheming bitch. This is all your fault. You set me up. I'll kill you. But before she could reach me, my lawyer and a few of my younger cousins quickly intervened, holding her back. David, finally snapping out of his stupor, didn't come after me. Instead, he collapsed to his knees and crawled to his uncle's feet, weeping and begging. Uncle, please, help me. I was wrong. I was a fool. Please, talk to Clara. Ask her to forgive me this one time. I don't want a divorce. A scene of chaotic, abject humiliation unfolded before me. The very people who had been so smug and triumphant just minutes ago were now either consumed by madness or on their knees begging for mercy. I said nothing. I just stood there, watching silently. I felt no joy, no pity, only a profound sense of exhaustion and disillusionment. This play had to end. I signaled to my lawyer. He stepped forward, his voice clear and resonant. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may, with the evidence just presented, my client, Miss Clara Hayes, has sufficient grounds to file a lawsuit against Mrs. Brenda Miller and Mr. David Miller for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit fraud. However, he paused, and a flicker of hope appeared on David and Brenda's faces, out of consideration for what little family connection remains. Miss Hayes has decided not to press charges. On one condition, my lawyer continued, his voice hardening. Mr. Miller must agree to sign the divorce papers prepared by Miss Hayes, with a clause stipulating that he will walk away with no assets. Furthermore, his entire family must vacate the residence at 28 Sycamore Lane within 24 hours and is legally barred from contacting Miss Hayes ever again. He placed the divorce papers, which I had already signed, on the table. This is your only path to retaining a shred of dignity. The choice is yours. The ultimatum was clear, final, and non-negotiable. They could either lose everything and face prison, or lose everything and keep their freedom. I knew which they would choose. Faced with my undeniable ultimatum, David's family had no other choice. Cornered and staring down the barrel of criminal charges, their greed finally gave way to fear. The eldest uncle, after hearing the terms, turned to David and snarled, "What are you still sitting there for? Sign it. Do you want this whole family to go to jail? Sign it now." Under the immense pressure from his relatives, amidst their glares of contempt and anger, David picked up the pen with a trembling hand. He didn't dare look at me, his head bowed in shame. He scrawled his name on the divorce papers. The signature was shaky and messy, a final, sloppy period at the end of our 5-year marriage. Brenda, after her hysterical outburst, was now slumped on the floor, sobbing silently. She knew that from this moment on, she had lost everything: her wealthy daughter-in-law, the luxurious house, and even the future of her coddled youngest son, who now faced a bleak and uncertain path. That very evening, a hasty exodus took place at my home. Under the supervision of my lawyer and a few of my relatives, David's family packed their belongings in silence and shame. The designer clothes, the expensive handbags they had bought with my money, I didn't ask for any of it back. I let them take it, a final act of charity. As they loaded their things onto a moving truck, David approached me one last time. He stood before me, his face a mask of belated regret. "Clara, I am truly sorry. Can you just tell me one thing?" "What?" I asked, my voice flat. "How? How did you know everything? Who? Who helped you?" He still couldn't believe that a wife as gentle as I was could have orchestrated all of this. I looked at him, and for the first time in days, I smiled a light, unburdened smile. "No one helped me, David. You and your mother helped me. Your own bottomless greed exposed you. You should remember one thing: never underestimate a woman, especially one whose self-respect you have trampled upon." With that, I turned, walked back into my house, and closed the door firmly, leaving him standing alone with an answer he would probably never understand. The war was over, but I knew its echoes would linger. Would this betrayal leave a permanent scar on my heart? After shedding this heavy burden, could I find true peace and happiness for myself? The next chapter of my life, post-divorce, was just beginning. After David's family left, the large house became strangely quiet. At first, the silence felt a bit empty. For 5 years, I had grown accustomed to the noise, the chatter, the arguments. But that emptiness was quickly replaced by a profound sense of relief, a peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. I no longer had to wake up at dawn to cook breakfast for a crowd. I no longer had to endure my mother-in-law's constant criticism and demands. I no longer had to see my sister-in-law's pouting, entitled face. And most importantly, I no longer had to face my two-faced, weak-willed husband. I was free, truly free. The first thing I did was call back the cleaning service I had been forced to fire. I had them deep clean the entire house, from top to bottom. I wanted to wash away every trace, every negative energy they had left behind. I threw out all the things they had used. I replaced all the bed linens and curtains. I wanted to reclaim my house as my own, a clean and pure space. Then, I took a week off. I turned off my phone, didn't check my emails, and ignored my work. I slept deeply, dreamlessly. I went grocery shopping for myself and cooked my favorite meals. I spent hours soaking in the tub, reading a good book, and listening to classical music. I was learning to love and care for myself again, something I had forgotten how to do for 5 long years. But I knew I couldn't stay in this quiet bubble forever. I had a company to run, a career waiting for me. The day I returned to the office, my employees greeted me with applause and looks of admiration. My story had spread. They no longer saw me as a distant, demanding boss. They saw me as a resilient woman, a symbol of strength. I called a company-wide meeting. I didn't talk about my personal life. I shared my new vision and strategies for the spa chain. I wanted everyone to see that Clara Hayes was back and stronger than ever. My energy and decisiveness breathed new life into the company. However, there was one problem I had to face: the damage David had caused. Before he left, in his role as business manager, he had signed several unfavorable contracts. He had given preferential treatment to suppliers who were family friends, purchasing low-quality products at inflated prices. It took me a significant amount of time and money to clean up the mess, terminate those contracts, and find new, reputable partners. It was another expensive lesson about not mixing personal feelings with business. While I was busy rebuilding my company, I heard news about David's family. A friend from their hometown called me. After being kicked out of my house, they couldn't stay in the area due to the humiliation. They had to move back to the countryside. But the family home that Brenda had signed over to Ryan and Tiffany was no longer a peaceful retreat. Tiffany, now in possession of the asset, dropped her good daughter-in-law act. She became domineering, openly disrespecting her mother-in-law. Brenda, who was used to being waited on hand and foot, now had to live under the thumb of her own daughter-in-law. You reap what you sow. She was finally getting a taste of the life I had been forced to endure. When I heard the news, I felt no satisfaction, just a sense of cosmic irony. The wheel of karma sometimes turns with surprising speed. But that was their story now, and I no longer cared. My life was here, with my plans and a future wide open. I had learned to let go of the past to move forward, unburdened. Time flew by. 6 months had passed since the fateful day I walked out of the courthouse, a divorce decree in my hand. Feeling as light as a cloud. Half a year isn't long, but for me, it was enough to bury a painful past and cultivate a new, more vibrant life. My life settled into a rhythm I had never dared to dream of before, a rhythm of peace, purpose, and fulfillment. I was no longer just a wife whose happiness depended on a man. I was Clara Hayes, an independent, self-reliant entrepreneur who found joy in her career and the value she created. My company, after the shock of David's betrayal, didn't just survive, it thrived. I restructured everything, shifting our focus from mass-market products to the unique resources of our own country. I spent months traveling, working with local farmers and indigenous communities to source rare botanicals and traditional beauty recipes. From this, Terra Pure, a new line of all-natural skincare, was born. It wasn't just a product. It was a story of rebirth and a celebration of natural heritage. Terra Pure was a massive success. Customers loved it not just for its effectiveness, but for the story behind it. We began exporting to markets in Asia and Europe. I proved to the world, and more importantly, to myself, that without David, I wouldn't just survive. I would soar. But business success wasn't what made me happiest. I started hosting free workshops for young women, sharing my story and mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs. I wanted them to see that women could be independent, successful, and stand on their own 2 feet. Seeing the hopeful, shining eyes in those workshops gave my life a new, profound meaning. One crisp autumn afternoon, my assistant entered my office hesitantly. "Miss Hayes, there's a visitor who wants to see you. She doesn't have an appointment." "Who is it?" I asked. She said she's an old acquaintance. "Her name is Tiffany." The name made me freeze. Tiffany, my former sister-in-law. I hadn't heard anything about her in months. Why was she here? A complex feeling rose in me, but I nodded. "Let her in." The woman who entered was a shadow of the person I once knew. She was thin, pale, and dressed in worn-out clothes. The glamorous, arrogant woman was gone, replaced by a timid, defeated figure. The designer bags and shoes were gone, replaced by an aura of hardship. "Clara," she began, her voice trembling. "What do you want, Tiffany?" I asked, my tone neutral. She didn't dare sit. She stood before my desk, wringing her hands. I came to ask you for something. I know I have no right, but I have nowhere else to turn." She broke down, sobbing, and told me her story. Her husband, Ryan, had remained his lazy, entitled self. Without me as an ATM, he turned to gambling and drinking. He burned through the savings Brenda had given them, and then mortgaged the family house, the last asset they had. Brenda, having lost everything, suffered a minor stroke and was now bedridden, needing constant care. Tiffany's life had become a living hell. She was caring for a sick mother-in-law and a young child while being harassed by loan sharks. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she wept. "I'm just begging. Can you give me a job? Any job. A cleaning job at one of your spas. I need money for Mom's medicine and milk for my son. Ryan? He left months ago. I'm desperate." I sat in silence, a storm of emotions within me. She had been part of the family that treated me like dirt. But looking at her now, a desperate mother, a deserted wife, my heart couldn't remain entirely hardened. She had made terrible choices, and she was paying a terrible price. After a long pause, I sighed. "Go home," I said. Her face fell with utter despair. She thought I was rejecting her. "And come to the spa branch on Main Street tomorrow," I continued. "Ask for the manager, Susan. I'll call her ahead." She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. You'll really?" "I'm not helping you," I said sternly. "I am giving you a chance to provide for your innocent child. Whether you take it is up to you. But be warned, my company has no place for laziness or deceit. One mistake, and you're out. Understand? Yes. Yes, I understand. Thank you, Clara. I'll be grateful for the rest of my life. She sobbed, bowing repeatedly before backing out of the room. Watching her leave, I sighed again. I didn't know if it was the right decision. I wasn't a saint. But perhaps the greatest revenge is not to crush your enemies, but to show them you can live well without them, and even have the power to grant them a lifeline. After all, her child was blameless. My life continued on its peaceful, successful course. Tiffany, true to her word, worked diligently as a janitor. She was humble and hardworking, a complete transformation from her former self. The other employees, taking pity on her, often gave her food and old clothes for her son. The manager told me she took on extra piecework in her spare time, sewing buttons to earn a few extra dollars. The harsh realities of life had taught her the value of hard work and responsibility. One rainy afternoon, I was taking a walk in a park near my house when I saw a familiar, broken figure on a bench. It was David. He was disheveled, gaunt, and unshaven, an almost empty bottle of liquor beside him. He looked like a homeless man. The polished, handsome executive was gone, replaced by the hollow shell of a failure. He saw me and flinched, hiding the bottle like a guilty child. I had no intention of stopping. I was about to walk past him like a stranger, but he called out my name, his voice a weak, hoarse whisper. Clara. I stopped but didn't turn around. I'm sorry. He choked out, his voice thick with misery. I know it's meaningless now, but I truly regret everything. I lost it all, Clara. I lost you, my job, my family, my honor. I destroyed everything myself. He began to sob, the broken, gut-wrenching sobs of a man who had hit rock bottom. If only I hadn't listened to my mother. If only I had cherished you. But it's too late. I remained silent. What was there to say? Pity? Blame? It was all pointless now. His late-stage regret couldn't erase the scars. I hope you live a good life, was all I finally said. Then I walked away, decisively, without looking back. I heard him call my name again, but I didn't stop. Our relationship, at that very moment, was truly and completely over. There was no more love, no more hate. Just two strangers on two very different paths. Later, I heard through the grapevine that David had left town, a drifter with no destination. Brenda eventually passed away in the cramped rental apartment, attended only by Tiffany and her grandson. A family built on schemes and greed had imploded in tragedy. My life, however, was a series of peaceful and successful days. I didn't remarry. Love was no longer my priority. The wound had healed, though a faint scar remained. I found joy in my work, in my philanthropy, and in the family I had built around me, a family of shared experience, support, and genuine affection. One beautiful weekend, I hosted a garden party at my home. My guests weren't business partners or socialites. They were the women my foundation had helped, my loyal employees, and the young entrepreneurs I had mentored, including a quiet and grateful Tiffany. As I looked at their bright, hopeful faces, my heart filled with a warm sense of contentment. I raised my glass. I'd like to make a toast, I said, my voice clear and warm, not to my own success, but to the resilience of all of us as women. Life may throw its harshest challenges at us. It may push us to the brink. But as long as we never give up, as long as we love and respect ourselves, we will always find our light in our own path. Everyone cheered. The golden afternoon sun bathed the garden, illuminating the radiant, happy faces. In that moment, I realized I hadn't lost anything. On the contrary, I had gained so much. I had learned an invaluable lesson about human nature, discovered my own hidden strength, and found a bigger, truer family. I smiled, a genuinely peaceful and happy smile. The storm had passed, and after the rain, my sky was clearer and more brilliant than ever before.